What do you think is the biggest hurdle that everyone, my name is Rob Ratliff. I'm here on the Entrepreneurial Podcast. And today we have Scott Springer from Chelwood Consulting Group. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Doing well, Rob. How are you?
Good. So good. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
As our podcast is all about the entrepreneurial odyssey, the challenges that entrepreneurs face and how they overcome them, what those journeys look like, what entrepreneurs are working on now, what lessons they've learned, all those kinds of things. So we're going to really want to dive into more, not only the history, but what brought you to what you're doing today, and then also cover some of the things you do today, what some of those challenges are. And I know you're in consulting and you work with businesses a lot, so it's going to be real interesting to talk to you about some of the challenges that you see a lot of businesses facing today
Yeah.
and how to overcome those challenges as well. So, first, I'll just let you start, introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your company a little bit, and then we'll go into more of the history, like how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Scott Springer, Chelwood Consulting Group. Started my consulting company about 3.5 years ago. I'm a small boutique consulting group. There's a few of us that work together, and we help entrepreneurial manufacturing companies, people who are struggling in manufacturing, supply chain, help them roll out lean manufacturing practices, fix supply chain issues, help them optimize their organization so that they can scale and grow exponentially.
So, what got you into that? How did you end up there?
I graduated from school. I was in the Navy, and when I got out, went into manufacturing. I was an officer in the Navy, and I was in manufacturing for over 25 years. And every time throughout my whole career, almost every job I got in manufacturing, I was always the turnaround guy. I was the guy sent to a plant to fix a plant, or I was the guy who was recruited by a headhunter to turn a plant around or turn a company around or help a company grow. And I did that over and over several times. The last big company I worked for, actually it was small when I started, was Vital Proteins. Started with them when we were small. Didn't know if I wanted to go work for such a small company. The owners, we're going to be doubling every single year, and we're going to grow to sell to some big CPG company. You didn't know who at the time. And we're building a brand new manufacturing facility. And that's what excited me the most, was to be able to build and design my own plant. Because I was always the turnaround guy who inherited somebody else's mess, their hot mess, and the way it was designed, and had to figure out how to optimize a plant. First time I was ever able to design a plant from scratch to be truly lean and efficient and energy efficient and all that. And so that's what really brought me to the company. And I didn't think we would double, and who doubles every single year, right? Nobody. We did. So not only did I get to design a plant, but I actually got to go through that, like what you were talking about, that entrepreneurial, like all the issues of scaling super fast. We sold to Nestle. About a year later, I started my own consulting company, and now I'm helping other entrepreneurial companies like scale and grow and deal with the issues that so many entrepreneurs deal with.
Yeah, it sounds like that would have been quite a journey. I have a book that I wrote called Driven to Succeed, and in that book, the letter V stands for vision. And obviously,
Yeah,
the Vital Proteins leader, CEO, had a vision. Like, we're
he
going to
did.
build a brewery, we're going to sell. He knew what was going to happen, and that is so cool to hear.
Yeah.
He just had that vision, knew exactly what he wanted to go out. How many businesses that you consult with, is that one of the things you notice that they don't really have a clear vision?
I would say most of them don't initially, and that's usually the first discussion I have them. It's, what do you guys want to do? What's your end game? Where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And then get them. Some of them, they have an idea what they want to do, but they don't have an exact number or time frame or anything like that. So I help them through that. And it's okay, we'll develop the plan to get you there. But most of them are just, they get into it, they want to grow, but they really don't have that roadmap on how to get there.
How important is it to have that actual financial number in mind?
I think it's a goal, right? You always need a goal. You might not hit it, you might exceed it, but you need that number to shoot for, because that helps build the plan on how to get there.
Would you say a very specific number, or just in a year I want to be 1 million plus? Or are you like, would you say in a year we're going to be 999,742?
Yeah, no.
You know, like,
No, it doesn't need to be very specific, but it can't just be, I want to get big. How big? What's big? Define big.
yeah,
Nestle's big, right?
yeah.
It's like, what's big for you, right?
Yes. Yep. Tesla's big.
Yeah,
Elon's empire's big. Yeah.
and even Tesla's not even that big. They're valued a lot, but they're not as big as General Motors and Ford,
Yeah. True.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Or Toyota, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I've heard stories Honda and how he got started, and he just wanted to make the best part for the car, and his
Yeah.
factory burned down. And he had to start over. Just so talk about a journey. Yeah. So the first thing, hey, what's the vision? Where is it you want to be? What do you want the company to look like in the
Yeah.
future? That kind of thing. And then what's the next step?
A lot of it is a little bit of every successful manufacturing plant, you're going to deal with the people, the processes, and the equipment. And on the people side, it's what type of culture, what type of organization do you want to run? Some people like the quiet office that's not obnoxious. Other people like to have that loud, boisterous place. What type of place do you want to run? What type of people do you want to work with? You got to know the type of people you want to bring into your organization and be a little specific there too. You got to have some diversity, but
Yeah.
not everybody shoots for that. And when I say diversity, I'm talking about diversity across the board: age, sex, religion, race, ethnic backgrounds, everything. I bring it all in. That's what I prefer. But not everybody likes that, and that's fine. But it's, yeah, figure out what you want to be. What do you want your organization to look like in the end so that you can start building it? 'Cause you got to design everything. You got to design, let's say it's a manufacturing plant. You got to design what your offices look like, your equipment's going to look like in the end, and you start building the blocks.
Mhm.
You got to design what the organizational number of people you want to be and who they are and what's the makeup between sales and marketing and operations and support, and all that is dependent on what your company does. Obviously, different strengths you need in different areas.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest hurdle that a manufacturing company is getting run into? What is the most common thing that really holds them back?
It's funny because there's two types of manufacturing companies that I see. You have the people who are really good at sales and marketing, and they know from a financial standpoint that it is more cost effective and more profitable to manufacture. And they're really good at growing their company from sales and marketing, but then they really don't know how to manufacture and do supply chain and do operations. And they really struggle in that area. And then it's like the polar opposite. You got people who are really good at running plants and who know how to like make things just run optimally.
Yep.
But they don't know how to sell and market their services and company and product that they have. The best that I've seen is when you got companies that are a partner between those two people. You got two owners, and it's one person is the awesome sales and marketing person, and the other person is the awesome operations person, and they work very well together.
Yeah.
And as you might be aware, a lot of times in companies, sales and marketing and operations are constantly butting heads over.
Yep.
Everybody butt heads over the objective, but how to get there. And then as long as they focus on the objective, they usually works well. But
whatever objective that is, and I think those objectives change too over time. You could,
yeah,
especially if you're laying out a plan, we've got to conquer this, then that, and all those kind of things. So no, I agree. And then I think there's also the people person.
Yeah.
Which one is really good at driving the team, keeping people motivated, creating the culture? I've been in businesses or seen businesses that have a great culture, and then other ones just have a really awful culture.
Toxic. Yeah, I've worked in some toxic environments, and
yeah,
you think it's gonna go in and it's gonna be great, and after a couple of months, I'm like, what's going on here? This is weird. Why would anybody want to work here? Type of environments.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is, I'm going back. I'm thinking kind of the Tony Robbins kind of motivational stuff. He's always saying like, there's either pain or reward, right? And I think what's interesting about that is if you have a toxic environment like that's stifling your growth, there's some kind of reward that people are getting for being toxic.
Or there's no repercussions. One of the two.
Yeah.
It's either the carrot or the stick, right?
Yep.
And it's one of the two is not being applied to get people to act a certain way.
Yeah. You can look at numbers, you can look at productivity, you can look at machinery, you can look at all those kind of things. How do you tackle, just going on this same vein, how do you tackle the toxicity? How do you get people together, banding together, working together?
Let me take a step back, because remember I was talking about you got to create that culture. What's that culture going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to affect the toxicity is to make sure you bring in the right people when you recruit them. Now, sometimes you get handed the bag, a
Yeah.
bag of whatever. But at Vital, it was cool because we were growing the organization. We quickly got rid of some of the bad people, the bad eggs, and
Yeah.
then we focused on who we were hiring to make sure that the culture was
Yeah.
right, that they matched the culture. Because
Yeah.
you got to realize everybody has a different personality, right?
Yeah.
I was teaching a course at a college, and a bunch of college kids. There's no right or wrong answer. Are you the type of person that likes the crazy entrepreneurial roller coaster, or where you come in every day and you don't know what's going to hit you in the face when you open the door? Or are you the like to know what you're going to be doing for the next month or two, and it's a slow development, and that's like the large company or a slower company?
Yeah.
Neither one is wrong. It's what do you prefer, right?
Yeah.
What is it? What do you actually like as a person? When I was interviewing at Vital Proteins, it was a completely different mindset than when I was interviewing at, let's say, a company called Bunge, right? Bunge's a big company, big global organization.
Yeah.
And at Vital Proteins, it was like, I'd be in an interview and I'd be rough with people. I'm like, dude, this is the craziest place you're ever going to work. I didn't believe we'd be growing 100% a year, but we are, and we're going to continue to do it. If you're not ready for the roller coaster and changes every day, if you like steady state, don't come here because you're going to be miserable. You're going to hate it here.
Right.
Okay. You will absolutely hate it here if you don't like the craziness, right?
Yeah.
And because you think about it, if you bring in a person who likes to do the same thing every day into that type of environment, that's your toxic person. They're going to hate it, and it's going to fester throughout the whole organization. But I had to be blunt with people because I didn't want to have any doubts if somebody was coming here that this was anything like a steady, same day in, day out job. It was not. It was constantly like the Wild West in some ways, just craziness. And it was like an organized chaos. We're all pulling together, but it was not steady state and easy 9-to-5 job in any means for anybody in the organization.
Yeah, I think especially when you're a smaller company starting out, that ability to churn quickly, make changes is so important. And
Yeah.
I remember working for a company back in the day called America Online, which was just big way to connect net nationwide, worldwide. And someone, I think it was Bob Pittman, who was the vice president, said something along the lines of, we get a lot of requests for changes, and we love having the feedback at things, and sometimes people get upset because they don't see the changes happening quickly. And he said, a smaller business is like going to be like a speedboat, a little motorboat. They can churn very quickly, make changes very quickly, speed up, slow down. And then you have something like America Online, which is more like a cruise liner. When you go to make a course adjustment there, it takes a long time for that thing to make that turn. I thought, wow, that's such a great analogy.
I was in the Navy. We use a battleship.
Yeah, okay, right. So it's a battleship versus little speedboat. Yeah. So when you get in an organization and you're looking at the culture, you're looking at the hiring, like you said, I think it's so important. You had mentioned the design of it. And I think that even comes down to, like you said, what does your workforce look like? How do you design that? What kind of culture do you create there? When I hire for my company, whether I was working for other companies or my own company, what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for the individual that can take the responsibility, take that bull by the horns, and make the audibles and make decisions, and ready, fire, aim. Right? You've heard that before. So it's like, look, if you think something needs to be done, do it. And if it doesn't work out, we'll handle that later. But don't feel bad because it didn't work out. I want someone that's just going to do it. It's just going to handle it. And that's the kind of culture I like. And one that's just communication. Talk to me, talk to your peers. You've got support. If something's bugging you, say it. Door open policy. So that was me. Now, in your world, when you're working with these manufacturing and corporate, small, large, what have you seen has been like if you could describe the ideal culture in a business that could grow and double every year, what does that culture look like?
When I've worked with companies that grew versus companies that didn't grow. Let me talk about the companies that don't grow. Is when you got people working in silos and they want to be the person to make the decision and be the hero, I'll say, to get a project across the finish line, right? In other words, I did that project. I finished that. They're all talking about I and it's not we, right?
Yep.
It's very slow at that point, and they're focusing on their own personal objectives, usually like an HR annual review objective that they have to do. When we were growing at Vital, we had no reviews. We didn't have personal objectives. We had the company objective. That was it. That was it. The places that I worked at where we grew the most, right? One, we didn't put a whole lot of emphasis necessarily on those annual objectives. We were focusing on the team's goals. And if there were any goals, they weren't personal goals. They weren't Rob's goals. They were the department goals, and the whole department had to achieve it. They were the only personal goals that people had were like personal development, reading the books, taking classes, stuff like that. But other than that, there were very few personal goals and objectives. It was always either a team or company goal to achieve it. And either everybody won or everybody lost. It was one of the two. But I like the people on the teams people who work together. So when a decision is made at the end, it's not a person's decision. It's everybody decided this. It might be like 20% Rob, 15% Scott, 35% Julie, 20% this other person came up with this one decision or this one plan to make something happen, and then we all go together and make it succeed. And when you're in that type of collaborative work environment and everybody knows I'll say the rules, but like how you interact with each other, don't take things personal, and we're just trying to find the best idea, not necessarily your idea. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, it's big. And I think I like what you said earlier where you said company objective, right?
Yeah.
This is the aim of the company. And I think that's when we get outside of the silo type of thought process of your objective is this. No, the objective overall is to hit this company standard.
Yeah.
Number, whatever goal set. And I think that's so important because I think there's so many companies out there, like you said, you don't even know what that objective is. What's the objective this month that this business needs to conquer?
Yeah.
And I think there are businesses out there that they don't think about it. They're so busy in the day-to-day that they don't sit back and go, okay, what is our goal for this week, for this month, for the next quarter that we need to hit, and communicate that out and get everybody on that page.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, like when I develop goals, let's say we have a 3-year goal. I always like to do like a 3-year goal. Okay, so we're going to triple in 3 years. Okay, so what does that mean for 2025? What do we have to do in 2025 in order to triple by 2027? And so if we're doing that in 2025, what do we need to do this quarter, next quarter to hit that 2025 goal? And in order to hit this quarter's goal, what do we need to do January 30th in order to make that happen? You got to build it up into a play. I love sports, some sports, especially like football, because football is like that. You're designing the entire game. Like good coaches design the entire game, and the objective is to win. It's not to get, like Bill Belichick, I always thought was a great coach because it was always about the Patriots. It wasn't about Tom Brady getting the most yards. It was about the team winning.
Right.
And it wasn't about Bill Belichick winning, and it wasn't about Tom Brady winning. It was about the team winning, and that was it. It was all focused on the team, and he would design the games through the quarters, adjust accordingly, make the halftime adjustments, but they have the whole game planned. And probably not once in his entire career did the game go exactly as planned from beginning to end. It's just like in a business. It never goes as planned.
Yeah.
I was talking to a client the other day, and he's talking about, he's like, yeah, we got drivers that come in, they never show up late. I'm like, okay, so you just described every single warehouse in the United States. How's that any different than anybody else? How often do plants have truck drivers show up on time every single time? It's not necessarily the truck driver's fault. It could be the last place's fault. It could be an accident. It could be a train or whatever it was. Stuff happens all the time. Yeah. How you adapt and how you have a plan to adjust accordingly to absorb those issues that occur every single day. Yeah. That's how you get a good team, a good plan, and everybody knows what to do.
And now I think you're talking the SOPs. And I wonder, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you set well, first of all, what is an SOP? And then how do you set those and how do you communicate those?
Well, there's a couple different ways. You got to design the process first. What exactly do you want the process to look like? Mm-hmm. Okay. You have what you're doing now, and then you're like, what do we really want it to look like? Okay. And then when you design SOPs, a lot of times I work in like food plants and different manufacturing plants. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in many of them, the SOPs are written for the quality audits. They're not necessarily written for the actual operation of the facility. So
and before we go on, explain what an SOP is, just so.
Okay, SOP. It's just SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure. It's a work instruction. Some people call it standard work. It's a set of instructions on how you're going to perform a certain task or do an activity in an organization. It could be as simple as if you're taking a sales order, you have the how to fill in your CRM, which is your customer management software system, on the different screens on what you need to fill in and how to fill in the screens, and then how you manage that customer from a phone call to an actual sale. That would be like an SOP. In a manufacturing plant, it could be something receiving. Okay, truck shows up at the dock. What's the first thing you do? What's the second thing you do? You know, you go out there, you talk to the truck driver, you look at what he's actually delivering, you verify whether he's actually supposed to be delivering it to this facility, right, and make sure it's all there. You tell him what dock to back it in. You assign it to a forklift driver. The forklift driver then has what he needs to unload and where he's supposed to unload it to. So that's like your SOP. It's just actually how you do business. And every organization, the best running organizations have, might have hundreds of these SOPs, how to do all the different tasks in a business. The flaw that some people do is they either make them too rigid or not rigid enough. There's this balance depending on the organization on how flexible they need to be to absorb the issues. When a customer changes their order, when a truck only comes in half full, or right, with only a part of the order, how do you handle those things? Mm-hmm. And so you got to design the SOPs for the organization. And don't try to thread the needle. You just got to hit the barn door. Be close and guide the people in the right direction. And it's almost like when you get an instruction on how to install a TV or something, like when you buy stuff for your house and it gives you your instructions on how to start it and install stuff. It's the same thing, but it's in a business environment.
And the reason I say that is because even when you're talking about, you had talked about, hey, trucks are going to be late, things are not going to come up on time. So what do people do? There's going to be an SOP about that. Hey, if there's a late truck, then take that time to go work on this or clean up that or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. But then you also have to have that flexibility and that culture where if people are so stuck on this SOP that they're not thinking outside the box, and that's another, I think that's, and I don't know much about Elon, how he runs it, but I've heard that in rumors that he just looks for very smart people who can think for themselves, kind of thing, right?
Yep.
And so I look at it, it reminds me of, I know there was a joke about how someone was following these city workers and one would dig a hole and then the other guy would come and fill it up, and then they'd go dig another hole and then fill it up, and finally the guy couldn't figure out what was going on, asked him, what are you guys doing? He said he's responsible for digging the hole and he's responsible for filling up, but the guy that's supposed to put the tree in there didn't show up today.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it's like you got to be careful with those SOP too. That
right.
But it is good to have standing operating procedures based on the design, based on the outcome. That am I getting it right?
It covers 90 to 95% of the situations that get thrown at you every day. You can follow that procedure, and then 5% of the time, you either got to ask for help or collaborate on how to resolve the issue.
Yeah.
You got to train people to make sure it's like if this is an unusual situation, you either make the decision if you know how to handle it. If you don't know how to handle it, don't be afraid to ask on how to ask for help.
Yeah, yeah, and it is interesting because there is a fine line between take on the challenge, do it, and if you're completely in the dark, then reach out and ask someone. But you also don't want that person in the system that has to ask every little thing to do. And you don't want to create a culture where that has to happen, because then zero growth. I mean, it's just not going.
Yeah, it's stagnating is what it is.
Yeah,
it becomes so bureaucratic. That's like bureaucracy. Like the big companies are like that. They become so bureaucratic, they can't get out of their own way. And that's what slows their growth down. That's why the growth is like single-digit growth versus like high double-digit, triple-digit growth, is because they become so bureaucratic. You got to ask permission for everything. And there's so many restrictions on what people could do. It's take the handcuffs off. Let people grow the company.
Okay, so going back to the vital proteins, What are some of the challenges that you guys faced when you were first starting, and how'd you overcome those?
Okay, so I came in a few years after the company already started. And that first year, like when I design companies and like at Vital Proteins was the same way, you're going to design it for the long-term growth. So like when I was designing processes at Vital Proteins, I wasn't designing it for, when I started, it was about a $35 million company. I wasn't designing it for a $35 to $70 million company. I was designing it for a $250 to $500 million company, right? The hardest year at Vital Proteins was by far that first year because very few of the processes in place were designed for a $35 million company. They were designed for a sub $10 million company. When the owner started, this entrepreneurial genius, but not a lot of manufacturing experience, brought in some people who really didn't know how to manage a supply chain, didn't know how to lay out equipment on the line or organize a facility, and just threw bodies and equipment and it wasn't working. And so that first year of redesigning all of the existing processes to function for a larger organization and then we moved to a bigger plant and then have those processes just move into the new plant and it didn't matter. That first year was the hardest because we were fixing so many of the issues created by the old processes, redesigning the processes. The second and third year were like simple because it was like, 70 to 100. It's like 35 to 70 was 10x harder than 70 to 140. And it was like 10x harder than 140 to 250 million a year. Even though we grew $140 million a year was so much easier than growing only $30 million a year, only because we didn't have the processes and everything in place, the people in place and all that stuff. So it was like that first year of shuffling people around. And we talked earlier about handling the toxic people. We had a few toxic people we had to, send to our competitors, and make sure we bring in people with the right culture and everything. And then once we had the people in place, it was fun and easy after that first year. The first year was fun too, but it was stressful that first year.
Oh yeah.
Very stressful.
I think it always is. I think even you hear how many businesses close down that first year and how many make it to year 3, 5, the numbers just go down. But it does come back to those processes, the procedures, the goals, knowing where it is that you're going. So important. All right. When you first come into a business and you're starting to look at, okay, what are the things that are stifling growth? What are the barriers that are preventing this from happening, or, the growth that they want? Is there a checklist that you say, hey, look for these things? Or is it really just more observing with your years of wisdom and saying, okay, I can see there's a problem here, there's a problem there. Is it just communication, toxicity, process, procedures? If you could say to those who are listening right now, if you're not growing, here's the first 3 things that I would look at, kind of deal.
It's a simple question like that I always ask is, what's stopping you from growing 50% today? And it's we can't get enough customers. Okay, then it's not a manufacturing issue. It's like, how many hours a week are you running in manufacturing? Oh, we run one shift. It's 40 hours a week, and sometimes we run overtime. Okay, so it's not a manufacturing issue because it could easily go to 2 or 3 shifts. I don't have to worry about sizing equipment or anything like that at this point. Okay, then it becomes a sales issue. And is a sales issue a marketing issue, or is it a salesperson issue or a customer service issue? Or they might say, we can't keep our customers because we have quality issues with our product, right? And customers come and they get mad and they leave. Okay, then that's a manufacturing quality issue, not a manufacturing capacity issue. Right. And a quality issue is usually the processes or people, usually processes. Or it's, we got the sales and we can't make it fast enough, right? And if you can't make it fast enough, it's one of 2 things. They can't get the materials fast enough, which is a supply chain issue, or it's a manufacturing issue, either capacity or OEE, actual capacity. Maybe the equipment can handle it and they're just not running the equipment right. So they're only getting half the throughput that they should, or a quarter. I got some clients, manufacturing is not the issue. And right now, I know they're only running like 10, 20% OEE, which is like the efficiency of the equipment, but it's not an issue right now. So we're focusing on getting the sales up. And as soon as the sales come up, okay, it's easy to go to double how quick a machine can run. when it's only running at 20%. To go from 20 to 40, you can do that in a month. To go from 50 to 60 to 70, when you get higher, then it gets more difficult. But so you got to pinpoint every company. There was a book, Theory of Constraints. I forget the name of the book, but it was a theory of constraints. What's stopping the company from growing? What's the bottleneck that is stopping the company? Figure out what those are. And as you're working on that bottleneck, try to figure out what's going to be your next bottleneck once you get rid of that bottleneck.
Right.
There's always going to be a bottleneck. Otherwise, you have infinite growth all the time. Every company has a bottleneck right now.
And how much of that, and this is a loaded question, so how much of that falls on the CEO and the managers versus how much of that just falls on lack of education, lack of knowledge, really? And I'm going to answer this myself just because I want to set this up a little bit, but you can go into a place you can just say, clearly this CEO does not understand enough about what he's doing. We really need to educate him here on it. And you have other people who are like, wow, the CEO is, he knows what he wants. He knows where to get it, or he knows those goals. The problem is he just doesn't have the training that he needs to understand certain points or procedures, because it always comes down to two things. And this is what I've told people when I've talked to about teams and consulted them on different teams and team dynamics, is if you have someone on the team that's not performing, it's either A, they have a willingness issue or they just don't want to, or B, they don't have the training and they do want to. So it's going to be one of those things. And so is it, do you address the willingness, the ability, or do you address that they don't know what they're doing? So when you go in and you identify, what's the percentage of it's just they don't know what they don't even know?
It's 90% of the time.
Right?
90% of the time, from the CEO on down, they don't necessarily know. The best people to work with realize they don't know everything.
Right.
The worst people to work with think they know everything.
Yeah, and because they won't take instruction.
No, they're uncoachable. You can't help them. They can't get out of their own way. They're very difficult to work with. Those are like when I was at Violent other organizations, those are the people like, you better change fast, or just take the day off and start looking for jobs elsewhere. I'll let you you can spend the next month. You're going to be terminated at the end of February. You can work here, look for a job. You're not fitting in because you're just the ego's getting in the way of your growth. Yeah.
I when I worked for American Online, I had there's a girl on my team that was consistently late. And I was handed this team, and that was one of the things that I later in my job, or whatever you call it, shifted from managing my own team to going and fixing broken teams.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. And so it was like, hey, we're going to have you take over this team. The first thing you do is write up this girl because she's always coming in late. So I said, all right, now, is it willingness or is it ability? Which one of those is it? So I talked to her. I said, what is it? They want me to write you up because you're late. And you're like 10 minutes late every day, and your shift starts now. And she said, the issue that I have is I'm a single mom. I have to drop my kids off at school. Until those school doors open, I can't just leave them sitting out on the sidewalk and go. But as soon as the doors open and they get in, I head to work. And she said, I've told them this, but if they'll just move my shift 15 minutes later, I can be on time every day. So we did that, and she was never late again. So that comes down to that willingness versus ability kind of mentality. So I think when you come in and you find these CEOs, they want to grow, the management wants to grow, they're all behind it, and you don't have a willingness issue, then you know it's just let's teach them the rules of engagement, things that are going to help them.
Yeah.
But in your experience, what have you done, and have you had success stories where you found people that just was a motivation issue and you're able to turn them around? Have you seen that, or do you think it's like, yeah. So talk a little bit.
A lot of times, a lot of times when I go into an organization, before I show up there and bring other people in and so forth, it is a real lack of communication up and down to people below them. People are very authoritarian in their leadership. They're telling people what to do. They're not discussing them what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So it's very, very directive. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard going in organizations, we've told them that a dozen times and they just don't listen or whatever. And sometimes you can't do certain things. But Rob comes to me and he says, I want to be able to do this. I go, check. Hey, but I come back and I say, Rob, we're either going to do it or we can't do it because of this reason. You're going to appreciate it because I got back to you. They never even get feedback. They complain up and they get no feedback down. Right. They get the stigma of being the complaining employees. It's like when the employees aren't complaining, then you got a problem.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then you got a problem. When they start shutting down, you lose that communication, you lose that discussion, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I see it a lot, but I usually can break through it pretty fast because I take my managers out there, and if they're not already doing it, I've had a few that were already doing it when I go into an organization, like talk to everybody in the company. Mm-hmm. Walk the floor. It's management by walking around. It's like a terminology. Yeah, it's pretty important. Walk around, talk to everybody. Hey, what's your biggest issue you're seeing today? Try to fix it. Try to fix one thing a day, one thing a week that's causing their job to be more difficult. It's that servant leadership. And if you do that every single day as best as you can, and sometimes you can't do it. Some days your day is full of customer calls and office calls or whatever, but be out on the floor, talk to them regularly, talk to the managers, but also talk to the people.
Yeah. Let's go back to that servant leadership, because I think that's really important too. I've seen a lot of leaders who assume that their job is to make sure that the team is doing everything that he or she wants them to do because
what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep. And then you have the servant leadership, which is I don't want to put it in my words. I'll put it in your words. What does that mean?
Yeah, my word is like you're providing everything people need to succeed. That's the way I view it. The environment, the interaction with each other, all the tools that they need, everything they need to succeed. Yep. You know, if you limit them on what they need to do or the approvals they need to get their job done, it just bogs it down. It becomes frustrating, aggravating to work in an environment like that.
Yeah. And so I'll give you what I tell, the way I look at that servant leadership along the same lines is, I say simply, a lot of leaders feel like the employees work for them.
Yeah.
But it's actually, it's the reverse. You work for your team of employees. Your job, like you said, is to work for them to make sure they're successful. And I love that attitude. I love that when it comes to leadership management style. And that's so important. So tell us just real quick, because I know
one note on that. I got to say, you always have to flex your leadership style depending on the situation.
Oh, yeah.
You can use servant leadership on 100% of all your employees all the time.
Right.
Because you're going to have that very small percentage that's going to take advantage of that for negative reasons, not advantage for positive reasons, but for own personal gain. Collaborative leadership is another type of leadership style. Doesn't work in every situation. Works in most situations, not every one. You got to know when to pivot. Right? Study the different leaders. As a manager, as a leader, you should study the different types of leadership situations and know when you need to pivot from one style to another, depending on the situation or the people or person you're dealing with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the eye-openers I had was when we were working for a bigger company, and one of the things they did is they went and they polled the employees and they said, what do you expect from your manager? What do you want in a manager? And one of the things that the employees said was, we want to be held accountable. I thought that was interesting. They don't want to just get a job and then be forgotten about. They want to be followed up with, hey, did you get that done? Okay, you did. Great job. Now do this. And so it's like you can still give assignments and things for people to work on. It doesn't mean completely hands off. It just means give them what they need, give them the tools they need to do it, and then hold them accountable to make sure that they're getting it done because they appreciate that.
Yeah, and sometimes the backstory to that is you got a team of 5 people, and the general thing is we want to be held accountable. And what I've seen is the culture in that is we got one guy who's a slacker and 4 of us are doing all the work. Right. And he's not being held accountable for not getting the work done.
Yeah.
But he's being praised with the team. You know what I'm saying? He's getting all the benefits of the team. So you gotta people, they want to do a good job. Most people want to do a good job. Nobody comes to work to do a bad job.
Yeah.
The janitor wants to come into work and have a clean clean floors, clean bathroom, and whatever they're cleaning, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to do a good job. Let them do it.
Yeah. And help them do it. Give them the
Help
tools.
'em.
Tell us, I can't believe we're almost 45 minutes into this. It's just, time flies so fast. Tell me, give us a situation where you can talk about a company that you are really proud of the changes that you were able to go in and affect.
Any one of the companies that I went to, before I started my own consulting company and my own consulting company, I'll talk about the ones before though, because that's where I was with companies for multiple years. The biggest has to be Vital Proteins. 100% growth. It's like not many people in the country have been able to pull that off as effectively as we did.
Yeah.
Some people do it, but it's an ugly 100% growth where after that first year or two, it was pretty smooth and we kept growing and was able to handle everything. And we kept monitoring the growth, make sure we kept growing. And then we kept growing the organization so that we didn't skip a beat. When I first started there, it was like manufacturing was definitely behind. Sales was growing at 100%, but manufacturing couldn't keep up. Gotcha. And so it was to get everything into place, to get the equipment in place, to fill our supply chain, because our supply chain couldn't even handle our growth. We actually had to stifle how much we were allowed to sell that first year because we didn't have enough supply.
Right. Wow.
We didn't have the supply contracted, but the years after that, it got to be pretty smooth. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, no problem. And we designed the flexibility into the system. We developed all these people. One of the things I like is a lot of the people who work for me became plant managers, directors. Right. I had people who started out as leads and they're like warehouse managers now at companies. People who started out as temps and they're like senior supervisors and managers at different companies. They all developed in a very short period of time from entry level, never taught anything to they were running like teams of 30 people like 2-3 years later.
And I was given a award plaque once. I was training a call center or something up in, where was it? Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. But when I was done, they gave me this plaque and it said something like the mark of a true leader is not what they've accomplished, but in who they brought with them, kind of thing. Yeah. So yep. I think that's exactly what you're saying is how good it feels to not only affect the business, but affect the people within the business. Because let's face it, business is people. Yeah. Whether you're on that side or the inside or the outside, it's without people, you're not going to be in business very long.
Yeah, and we really create like a culture where we're still friends. We all left, most of us have all left Vital years ago. Nestle took over and Nestle's running it. There's a few people still there, but most of us left and most of us all keep in touch and we're still friends. Yeah. And I've been like that with a lot of my companies that I've been to and worked with. Turn it around and became friends because of what we went through and move on to the next company and still maintain friendships.
Yeah. If there were just a couple of pieces of advice or maybe just one last piece of advice you would give entrepreneurs or business owners who are looking to grow or having trouble, what would that be? If you could narrow it down to 1, 2, or 3 things.
I'll give it down to a couple. Yeah. One is, we talked about it early on, is have that vision and figure out what the plan is. The owner, the CEO has to figure out the vision. They might also have to develop the plan if they don't have the bench strength under them, people who can do that, but have that vision. It's not just come to work every day, because that's no fun. People don't like, especially as an entrepreneur. Yeah. Go work for the government if you just want to come to work every day. Maybe not the last couple of weeks, but it's right. The second is, and I can't stress this enough, take care of your people. Yeah. Develop your people, make sure you got that proper culture. If you're not in the single digit turnover rate year over year, you're doing something wrong. Yeah. Most companies are in the double digit turnover rate. A lot of them, when I go in, it's very basic stuff that they do wrong. They just don't take care of their people holistically on everything, both on the shop floor, off the shop floor, how they're compensated, how they're taken care of, how they're treated, how they're talked to. Make them a part of the team. It's a true team environment with the owner, the entrepreneur is the owner. That's it.
Yeah. I like what you said about develop your people too. Yeah. Give them that book of the week and give them time to read it, or give them if there's a good book out there that's informative and enlightening, have them read it and give them a little gift certificate to a restaurant once they finish. I don't know, something.
Courses, pay for online courses to let them take, where they can have that certificate and they can put it on their wall or at their desk or on LinkedIn, whatever, should be proud that they finished a course that'll help them develop and become a better person at their job.
Yeah.
Just little things like that make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I really appreciate your time, Scott. This has been a really good conversation. I definitely want to have you back again because I feel like we've just scratched the surface on some of this stuff. But I really like what you say. How would people reach out to you, get in touch with you? I'll put links on the description. I'm put this on YouTube and Spotify and podcasts and
Okay.
all over the place. So tell them, but talk to them. How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best way to reach me is email. Email Scott at chelwoodgroup.com, Chelwoodgroup.com, one word. Yeah, reach out to me on email. You can go to our website, chelwoodgroup.com. One of us, I'm sure if you're struggling in operations or supply chain or want to develop your people, we can help you in all ways.
No, I appreciate that. And I love the things you said. Obviously, I've enjoyed this. I feel like we're on the same page on so many things we've talked about. So it's been a lot of fun. And again, thank you so much for your wisdom and your experience and your knowledge and sharing that with all of us.
Pleasure to be here. It was a lot of fun.
Yep, it was. All right, we'll have you back.
All right.